Hello, this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show. And today's show is dedicated to the position of Lieutenant Governor in the state of Texas. The Lieutenant Governor in the state of Texas is the second highest ranking official in the state of Texas, but an official that has incredible powers, an official that largely can nullify, for the most part, any sort of program or legislative initiative. It's incredibly powerful, but it's not very well known. And on today's show, we're going to talk about the issues in front of the Lieutenant Governor, primarily the prohibition on cannabis, the prohibition on marijuana, where Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick has taken a hard stance for the prohibition of marijuana, a very controversial subject today. We will also be going over emergency responses at the state level. We recently had a natural disaster, and we'll be discussing if our emergency responses are appropriate for the disasters that we are incurring. And finally, we're going to talk about something that very few people know about, which is our Texas Military Department. We actually have a military for the state of Texas. We were once a republic, and we still have a military for the state of Texas. We're going to talk about that. And on today's show, we have Timothy Marby, who's going to tell us all about these topics, a native Texan who is running for lieutenant governor, a candidate for lieutenant governor for the state of Texas. And Timothy, how are you doing today?
I am blessed and highly favored, Chris. Thank you for having me on the show today.
Great, man. It's good to have you. I'm glad you drove in from San Antonio. Long drive. We're glad to have you here on a late night. So, you bring to us a lot of really interesting subjects, and you yourself are an interesting person, an interesting man. At such a young age, shooting for the lieutenant governor position. Tell us about yourself.
Yes, sir. So a little bit about me is I'm a sixth generation native Texan, and primarily on the female side. The female side stopped with my dad and then myself. But we span back to my first ancestor was born here in not too far from Harris County in 1861. And I'm not certain when her parents came in here. But growing up in San Antonio, we learned all about the Alamo, the spirit of the Alamo, the spirit of Texas, what that looks like. And that come and take it type of mentality is how I was raised. And there is no greater country on earth than Texas. That's a good Texas humor joke, because here in Texas, we don't just see ourselves as a state. We still see ourselves as a republic.
Yeah. So what year do you date your family roots back to?
We can say that my first ancestor was born here in Texas definitively January of 1861.
1861. So Texas was already a part of the United States at that point, I think. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Yeah, okay. That is fascinating. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that in this state, there is a spirit of independence that runs through the veins of every Texan, but it's largely being tested, right? There's this sort of leftist narrative pushing us into compliance, pushing us to be afraid of a higher governmental power. And really, I find that we need to dig down and find our roots in the state of Texas. We need to find our roots in the year 1836, when all was on the line, in the defense of the Alamo and the other battles. And that Texas spirit of independence, I think, is important now more than ever.
Oh, it definitely is. See, that come and take it mentality isn't just a nice, shiny slogan or something on a t-shirt. That's the true mentality of facts over feelings. We don't care with what the government is trying to tell us. We don't care what someone's opinions are. We go based off of facts. And if the facts tell us one thing, we are going to go with that. And if you try bullying tactics, it's not going to work here. And right now, we are seeing when we're going to say the Democrats, they try to use bullying tactics. They use hate, they use anger. And it's like, hold up, we know what we're doing. You're not going to push us around, because we are Texas. We have that resiliency and we have that fire to say, enough is enough. And we're not going to just let you take it. You try to take anything from us that we love, it's that come and take it. Like, we're going to put up one heck of a fight.
Yeah, when we started the show, I purposely took an offensive position, and I put a stake in the ground, and I used Texas verbiage. I used it at every occasion. And I did it because I know that the message from the Democrats is you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. That's improper. That's politically incorrect. And the truth is, this land is the land of Texas. So, in my opinion, the Democrats can take their message of obedience and they can put it somewhere that's of their own person.
And if you look at Texas and the United States, we aren't politically correct. We were not founded on political correctness. Political correctness, in my view, is compliance. Blind, willing compliance. That is not Texas mentality, and that is not American mentality. We look at problems and we find a solution for it. We don't complain. We don't just say, this may or may not work. No, we're going to say, hey, we're going to try this. If this doesn't work, great, we're going to learn. But it is that rebellious type of spirit that we have. To say, we're not going to be sheep. We are going to be lions. And you're not going to push us or bully us around. And if you do, we're going to do what is ever necessary to maintain our integrity, to maintain our culture, and to protect each other.
Yeah, we have to win that culture war. It is a culture war. And, I'm glad to see some people like yourself who have actual roots in the state of Texas are stepping up to the plate and running for office. Can you tell us a little bit about the lieutenant governor position? Like I said in the beginning, it's an incredibly powerful position. It almost is equal to the governor itself, but people really don't know about the lieutenant governor position.
That's a great question. So the Texas lieutenant governor is actually the second most powerful position in the state and in the country. So when you look at this lieutenant governors in the country, Texas lieutenant governor is extremely powerful. It's almost to the point where it's unmatched to the governor. So if you want to look at the business aspect, the governor is the CEO of a company, and the lieutenant governor is the COO, Chief Operations Officer, because the lieutenant governor does the day-to-day operations. The governor gets the credit for the big shiny items, but the lieutenant governor is behind the scenes. They're doing the work. So lieutenant governor, they're going to step in when the governor's not here. So the governor's not here, guess what? Lieutenant governor is now running the show. And lieutenant governor is going to appoint chairs of committee. They set the agenda. They control the flow of legislation. And they're also going to work with legislators to shape and approve the state's budget. And they can push and block bills on issues that they like or don't like. So for instance, education, taxes, healthcare, and border security. So the lieutenant governor gets to put these priorities and say, hey, this is what I want to see, and can supersede what the governor has on his priorities.
So the lieutenant governor really can sort of put the kibosh, squash any sort of legislation that the governor's trying to get through. Is that correct?
That is correct. So the lieutenant governor can still put stuff on the agenda, but he can move it around as he sees fit. And we got to see that this legislative session.
In what way?
So right now we're in special session, which means the governor had some priority bills, like, hey, the legislation, they didn't get through what he wanted. One of them being flood relief. And right now what we're seeing is he wants to have a legislation on regulating THC, but the lieutenant governor is still pushing a full-on ban. But before the special session started and during the main session, we got to see Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick strong arm the Texas House of Representatives, because there was some legislation that he didn't want, that he wanted the THC ban to go through, but he held up school funding to base his agenda on.
Okay, so we're getting into one of the first subject areas, the ban on THC, correct?
That is correct.
What does that stand for?
So THC is better well known as marijuana or weed. That's the
Do you know
better
what the
word.
acronym stands for, though?
I am blanking on the full word. I know it's like, I think it's like tetrahedral cannabinoid.
I would say you're not blanking. Okay, so, is that product banned today? Forget about the governor versus the lieutenant governor on it. What is the status of it today?
Right now, THC or marijuana, it is not illegal. It is still legalized within certain parameters. So if it's over in the smoke shops, it is okay. But right now, the legislation that they're trying to push through, once again, is going to be a complete and total ban of all forms of THC. If you have
Okay, but if I can jump back for a second, of course, I grew up, and when we grew up, marijuana was fully illegal. At what point did marijuana become legal in the state of Texas?
So it started to become legal in 2018. So when we were in session in 2017, they passed legislation to start allowing it in small quantities. And that's what we're seeing. So it came from the Farm Bill, and then now Texas adapted that. So, okay, hey, Farm Bill is giving...
Farm Bill was a federal bill.
Yes.
So the federal bill came down the pike, and it had the legalization of marijuana to some extent in that. And that was that sort of caused it to happen in the state of Texas. Is that what you're saying?
So the Farm Bill...
There was money attached to that Farm Bill, probably?
Yes. So there was money attached to the Farm Bill.
2018, okay.
The 2018 Farm Bill, as it came through, it expanded mainly the industrial side of hemp. So there's a big difference. You have the consumables, and then you have the industrial side. There's a bit of a difference on how the plants work. But because the Farm Bill started to give it some alleviation, and what we saw in 2017, it started to expand the hemp industry. That was where the first pioneers of that for Texas started to come through. And in which time it has grown to be a massive industry that has over 50,000 jobs.
Okay, what are the industrial uses of hemp that are being done in the state of Texas today?
So industrial hemp, you can put it in concrete, make wood that almost does not burn. You can, so pretty much you can build houses out of it.
Make what that doesn't burn?
Wood. So you can make wood.
Okay, so when I grew up, I had a friend who was Hungarian, and he grew up in Hungary. He was as old as my father was, older than my father. And when he was a young boy, which would have been, I don't know, in the 40s, in the 50s, he in Hungary took hemp and they made rope out of it, and it supposedly made the strongest rope that one could make. And then when he came to the United States and found out, I don't even know if they knew that you could smoke it when they were doing this in Hungary. He comes here and he learns this other purpose of it and that it's illegal. And for him, it was just this really, interesting moment for him to see this difference in the two countries and how they used one product. But absolutely, my whole life, I knew that had a huge industrial purpose. So you can put it in wood that doesn't burn. You can put it in concrete. Does it strengthen concrete?
Yes.
What else can you do with it?
You can make clothing out of it. So pretty much any textile you can make. So when you put it into concrete, it makes it a little bit lighter, but also stronger. So you can make pretty much anything out of it. You can make about 50,000 products using the industrial hemp.
And was it legal to use industrial hemp prior to 2018 in the state of Texas?
No. So there's been a big villainization on hemp starting around the 1920s. Before that, we were using it for almost everything. Then there was a major fear campaign.
Real quick, prior to the 1920s, it was being used for almost everything, and then boom, they put the kibosh on it. And after 1920 up until 2018, it was illegal, even in industrial use, correct?
The industrial uses were extremely limited because it has THC in it. So right now, if you grow the industrial hemp, there are a lot of regulations and rules on it. So if you grow the plants, even the industrial side, if it has a THC quantity of more than 0.3%, the Texas Agricultural Department can come through and burn it. And they have to test that.
Okay, but I thought you said in 2018 they largely liberated the use of industrial hemp.
They did, but there's still a lot of parameters on it.
Okay, so it's liberated, but it's still liberated. It's still available only in small percentages.
Correct. The way I equate it to is if you grow sweet corn and it has a certain amount of sugar in it, if it goes too high above that threshold, they'll burn it. That's how I equate it.
Okay, so let's just talk about industrial. If we simply legalize the use of industrial hemp, what would that mean for the economy and the quality of our products?
If we completely legalize all the industrial hemp without the major regulations behind it, say, hey, we're no longer going to do the testing as a 0.3%, that would open up the doors to save farmers and ranchers a lot of extra money on the processing and the growing side. So it would stimulate the economy and be able to do more with it. Because right now, part of the rules when it comes to growing the industrial hemp is whenever you grow it, if your land separates by even a couple of feet, you have to get a whole new permit. So if you have a 100-acre ranch, but you have a road going in between, like
Yeah, right. 2 permits.
you had to get 2 permits.
It's hugely litigious and expensive.
Correct. And it's any deviation. So if you have even a small gap, you have to get a brand new permit and redo all the cost.
How would it save if we largely allowed for the legalization? How would it allow farmers to be more productive and save them money? I guess the argument you just used, or is there more?
It would increase the profitability overall. So right now, one of the big issues that we're seeing is we're losing at least 5 farms a day here in Texas. And it's not just the small farms. We're losing the lifelong, multi-generational family farms at high numbers. And part of the reason we're losing farms every day is because of the cost. For an acre of industrial hemp, you can get anywhere between $600 and $800 per acre. On the medicinal or the recreational side, you can get almost $3,200 per acre on farm. Now for sweet corn, you're looking anywhere between $300 and $500 an acre. So you're able to make a lot more money on doing the industrial as it sits right now. By rolling back some of the regulations and the strict rules on the industrial side, farmers are going to be able to make more money and keep their farms.
Guys, I want to take a second here to announce our featured product of the day. Our featured product is the X39 patch. This is the X39 patch. It is photolight therapy. And what it does is it rejuvenates your stem cells. It allows for so many benefits, one of which is it allows for better sleep at night. So with the X39 patch, I have a good friend who is a military veteran with PTSD, and he cannot sleep at night without the use of heavy meds. He takes heavy meds to sleep every night. After 14 days of the X39 patch, he sleeps like a baby. He no longer has heavy meds. He can sleep without the pharmaceutical medicines that they've been shoving on our people forever. Another benefit, after the age of 40, men have pressure on their bladder and they have to go to the bathroom regularly. When we are sleeping, we have to get up and go pee all of the time. This patch, what it does for me personally is that urge has gone away. If I'm on a long drive, if I'm walking into a meeting, or when I'm sleeping, it used to be a disruption in my day having to go to the bathroom all the time. Not any longer. The X39 patch has largely fixed that issue for me as a older than 40-year-old man. And finally, I have a heavy week. I do a lot of working out and I work hard and I drink a lot of caffeine. 2 of those big C4 drinks a day. I'm just caffed up all the time. Not any longer. The X39 patch, it allows me to operate without caffeine. It's amazing. I wake up at 5 a.m., roll out of bed, sharp as a tack, ready to go. I have no daytime crashes. I do not get sleepy behind the wheel. I do not need caffeine. And I go until I fall over in my bed at the end of the day and crash hard. The X39 patch. And to get a large discount on this patch, text the word Patriot to 330-606-2304. That's Patriot to 330-606-2304 for the X39 patch. Thanks, guys. Okay, where were we? Because we were on really good stuff. On the industrial, who are the opponents to allowing for the full liberation of the industrial use of hemp?
So Sid Miller, the agricultural commissioner, he's for it. He's actually growing industrial hemp.
And he's for it not because he's a hippie that wants to smoke dope on the street corner. He's in it for the farmers.
He's in it for the farmers as well as crop rotation. So you can.
By the way, I said the word hippie. It shows my age. 1970s. That's what we used to call them. Okay. Anyways, go ahead.
I mean, some people still call them that nowadays, but when it comes to who's for it and who's against it, during one of the first renditions of Senate Bill 3, they really didn't have a big definitive line between consumable and industrial. And it was after testimonies, now they understand, like, okay, this is a major benefit to the agricultural industry. And that's why Sid Miller's just for it. Because not only can it help the farmers have a better income, but it can actually replenish the soil and pull out a lot of the bad garbage. It's great for long-term remediation.
I mean, dude, you're totally selling me on this, man. I mean, it's like, again, I was prepped for this as a child. My friend from Hungary would explain to us the benefits, the industrial benefits. He did not use it for smoking, but he would explain the industrial benefits. I remember hearing this all of the time as a child. But did you say who were the opponents of it? Who are the opponents of allowing the liberation of industrial hemp?
So the industrial side, there's not too many opponents on it.
Then why isn't it happen? I'm sorry, please.
Well, because it's all about the regulation.
The government's making money on these regulations, on these obscene regulations.
Correct. They're overspending. We were told, hey, we had the most conservative legislative session. That's not true. We drastically increased spending. But when you increase spending, you got to figure out how to get additional sources. That means more taxes, or raising it, or not abolishing.
Yeah, I mean, this show, we've largely supported and endorsed the conservative candidates, but we're quickly learning that, where the left and the Democrats are a cancer, it's not like the Republicans are, a good student, and so I'm just trying to tell the citizens, we have to stay on offense. Please go ahead.
Well, no, you're right. And it's not a left or a right issue. It's, hey, judging people by their actions. If you're voting for a bigger government, more control, or egregious spending without decreasing, that's an issue. Personally, you can't just go out and spend as much as you want without a limit and then say, where am I going to figure this out? It doesn't work that way. You have to be fiscally responsible. Hey, if you're going to bring in, let's just say $1 million, you need to save at least 10% or more for a rainy day. You need to start stacking that up. Right now, a majority of our politicians say, hey, look, we have a surplus. We've been fiscally responsible in the past. Now let's go blow through that. And we're watching us spend a lot of money quickly. So I believe we need to doge Texas to actually cut down our spending, because we have bigger issues. We got to fix our infrastructure.
Yeah. I want to talk about that, but man, I am staying on this cannabis issue. This stuff is fascinating. So it's largely our own state legislature that is opposed to allowing this cash cow of overregulating an industry that would really lighten up our lives, is what I'm hearing. What about the recreational use of cannabis, of marijuana? The Farm Bill came through in 2018, and it allowed for this stuff. It was fully illegal to use cannabis on a recreational basis prior to 2018, correct?
There was still the Texas Compassionate Use Program, or TCUP, that was founded, I believe, 2015, 2016 is when the TCUP program first came into play. And that is the legal for medication of cannabis. So it was under specific guidelines where you can go and get it through a pharmacy.
TCUP was started in 2015, and it was legalizing medical use of cannabis. Go ahead.
Yes. And that's where we started to see the first actors and first companies started to come in. But the TCUP program is widely expensive. So you can go and get the same product. For instance, if you have a sleep issue, so there's different strokes for different folks. Some people, a patch will work. Some people, they'll go and get Ambien. Ambien doesn't work the greatest.
Ambien's a very harsh, controversial chemical that you're putting in your body. Sleep meds, I've heard things said about these things. These are pharmaceutical products that I would not want to take, and I wouldn't want anyone close to me to take.
No. Being in the fire department, I actually had a call one time where this person sleepwalked down the stairs and hurt themselves because they were on Ambien. It's common to have these type of issues. But if you go to the TCUP program, you can get some medication or a gummy that for the sleep issue. But the problem is it's going to cost anywhere between 3 and 5 times more for the exact same thing. I actually got to talk with a lady last week in Austin who was testifying, and she showed a jar and a bag of what she could get from TCUP. And she said one cost $90 and the other one was about $300. And she could go down to the local store and get it for $30. And she's a disabled Navy veteran.
Okay, so TCUP was legalized. Tim, you're really Timothy Mabry, candidate for lieutenant governor, now telling us about the state of cannabis in the state of Texas today. It's very good to have you on the show, Timothy Mabry, running for candidate for lieutenant governor, telling us about cannabis in the state of Texas. Okay, so 2015 we had the teacup program, and a hugely expensive medical program, better than sleep meds, but at the same time, a huge chunk of flesh every time. It's a lot of money every time you want to use it. And so 2018 comes, the Farm Bill comes, and we see a large liberation in the use of, in the legalization of cannabis. What about on the recreational side? What happened?
So that's when they started to expand it to where, hey, now you can start selling this in certain quantities over in these shops. But it was primarily some of the deltas, like Delta 8, Delta 9s, that you can get. All synthetic forms of THC are still illegal. So if you hear synthetic, those have been illegal since around 2010, 2012. So those have been illegal for over a decade. So that's been one of the fights that I've been hearing in the state legislature, is that there's synthetic strands that are legal. No, it's not. Everything you can get in a smoke shop typically is a Delta, and it's not synthetic. Synthetics are illegal because they have some major problems.
What does synthetic mean?
Synthetic is a man-made chemical that acts and replicates as marijuana.
Okay, I don't understand. 2018 comes, the Farm Bill comes, it largely liberates cannabis in the state of Texas. What does that have to do with synthetics?
Because right now, as they're
Because that's not cannabis, is what you're telling me. That's sort of a man-made chemical, something that copies cannabis, but it's not actually cannabis, if I understand you correctly.
Yes. So when you're hearing the public testimonies and what the state legislature is saying is they're still referencing items that have been illegal. They're using the wrong verbiage, and they're trying to use fear campaigns and tactics to say, hey, this is all bad. When you do a complete ban of this, and then as a complete ban, it would also put it to where Texans would go to jail. So right now, there are hundreds of thousands of Texans who since 2018 have been using this for sleep, for pain management. And now the current legislation that's being pushed forward is to make it illegal to where now they can have penalties and go to jail.
Okay, real quick, I'm sorry to keep asking this question. If I'm to the point of recreational marijuana that's legalized, am I able today to smoke marijuana cigarette and walk down the streets?
A marijuana cigarette by itself, no.
But in a gummy form, I could do it.
In a gummy format, in certain types of processed, yes, you can still do a roll. But straight marijuana, no.
Can you do it anywhere?
Not really in Texas.
Okay. But you're saying that certain people are taking cannabis products to help them sleep at night, correct? And this is not the teacup. This is affordable things. What kind of products are they taking to help sleep at night?
You can do gummies. There are some drinks, and there are different strengths and levels to it. There's a major science to it that I've just started to learn, but I'm not anywhere close to an expert because it is extremely in-depth of how this works. We actually have an endocannabinoid system in our bodies and with the receptors. So our bodies can work well with it. And that's not an area where I know the full science. I've been sitting and talking with people who do, and it's like, wow. I've listened to these testimonies for, at this point, several days now. And I still don't know everything. Each time you still learn a lot. And it's a lot of information to learn. But the more you start to learn, it is a better alternative than the over-the-counter medications that are deemed safe.
What other medical benefits come with using cannabis?
So it's a good treatment for pain, PTSD, anxiety. And if you have, I actually heard of one story where this individual had cancer and they couldn't eat for days. The doctor said, hey, I can't prescribe this to you, but if you go down to the shop, have a couple of gummies, you're going to be able to eat. And sure enough, these cancer patients would come in, take a couple of gummies, and be able to eat.
You know, we are in a great awakening where there are certain products that have been made, you know, it'd be prior to the 1910, 1911, when I would say the banking cartel got their hands on this country, natural remedies were the norm. And then what happened is the banking cartel, largely the Rockefellers, took over our medical establishments, our universities, began funding them, and then began creating an agenda that completely complied with their business interests, which was pharmaceuticals. And so we're in this discovery phase where we're learning that, you know, they were killing us with these medicines, supposed medicines. And now here we are learning about the effects of cannabis and other products, the effects of things like photolight therapy, the patch. It is an amazing time. I really hope everybody is out there learning about this stuff. Get yourself young again and start learning about these products. It's an incredible time to redeem your years. But with that being said, so you listed a number of the benefits of cannabis medically. So what is the next step? Is there a push right now to make smoking marijuana, cannabis, fully legal where you can smoke it? Or tell me where are we now? I know there's a football being pushed each way. Dan Patrick wants it fully illegal, but what is the best case scenario of liberation? Should smoking marijuana be fully legalized, or where should we put the stop in if there should be a stop at all?
Well, the stops that need to be put into place is to treat it just like you do alcohol and cigarettes. To say, hey, 21 plus, packaging that's not enticing to minors, and to weed out.
Allow the smoking of marijuana.
Correct, and you can do it in certain amounts. So when it comes to some of the gummies, you need to understand the process. So we've gotten a lot better in technology to where it can become even more pure. It's kind of like gold and silver. The more you refine it, the better the process, you can get to being almost all the way pure. And when it's almost all the way pure, what's considered 0.3% at 5 milligrams can actually be concentrated at 15. So part of what we need to do is go away from saying 0.3% regulation and say, hey, look, let's do it as a milligram, because that you can control a little bit better. And to say, hey, let's put it at a certain milligram limit before we consider it truly medical and needing to go to a pharmacy. Because you can do some lower levels like 5 to 10 milligrams just for sleep or for hunger. Certain things you can use, just like aspirin and Tylenol, you can get over the counter. So putting those limits in place and say, hey, if you need some stronger medication, you need something a little bit more, then you can go over the counter. Then you can go get a prescription for it.
But what about just recreational smoking marijuana? Should that be legal?
On that, I don't think it fully should be legal just to smoke it just fully recreationally in mass. So in small quantities, sure. I think it can be a benefit to do it, just like you do with alcohol and cigarettes. You have the right to choose on that. But I would say my full position on this would be, what do the people fully want? If majority of Texans say, hey, yes, let's do the full recreation legalization, then your responsibility as an elected official is to do what the people want. That's how we're supposed to be. Like, if the people want something, and overwhelmingly, you need to be listening to what their people say and not your own personal opinions.
Okay, so Dan Patrick is taking a hard stance against this. Greg Abbott is taking, I would say, an open stance towards this. He's okay with liberating it to a greater extent. What is Dan Patrick today? Why is he taking this hard stance? Dan Patrick is the lieutenant governor in the state of Texas.
So our current lieutenant governor, Dan Patrick, his stance is full on prohibition. And some of the things that he is stating is it's bad for the kids, it's enticing, and we don't know what's in the products. One product that he references quite a bit is Hometown Heroes. He actually, on a press conference, showed some of Hometown Heroes' products and then threw them into a box. Well, Hometown Hero, if you actually look at their products, it actually tells you what's in it. It's no mystery items. So they're using fear tactics and say, oh, it's bad for the children. It's being marketed towards them. But when you start following the money, and who is influencing him, you start to see that the alcohol companies and lobbyists have been putting money towards his campaign. He has a former staffer who is a lobbyist for a teacup company. So he has people who are paying into his campaign, who are good friends, influencing policies. And from the outside of, hey, look, your constituents, which all Texans, majority are saying on every study that has been done independently, not paid for by Lieutenant Governor, is saying the Texans want this.
That's a bold statement. You're saying Texans actually, we're a strongly conservative state. You're saying that Texans, because I would look at it, and I think Dan Patrick is taking a prudent political step by taking this hard stance. I think that there'd be a large percentage that would be in favor of him, but you're saying that's not the case?
That is not the case. Over 55% of all Republicans or all conservatives say they're okay with legalization of it. And 2/3 of all Texans say, yes, we're okay with this. And I know quite a few Republicans and lifelong conservatives who are using THC not for recreation, but for pain management, for dementia, for issues that they're having on their day-to-day that they can't get relief anywhere else. They say that is the only thing. So now these people who have been using these products for about 6 years now, 6 to 7 years, you're going to tell them, hey, grandma, hey, grandpa, guess what? You're now a felon. You're now going to go to jail and face a fine. That's the reality. So it isn't just the young people, as you said earlier, it's not the hippies. It's the everyday Texans, the retirees, the veterans, who are using this as alternatives to medications that are literally killing you. And this gives you a better quality of life. And to say now you're going to go to jail, now you're going to be a felon, and you're going to face a fine, that's not Texan. That is not the spirit of Texas right there.
Timothy Marby, candidate for Lieutenant Governor. Incredible hour that we have with this young man. Very bright, very intelligent. This is an incredible hour. I appreciate your time. One of the things that we discussed in the room up here, Timothy told us about the fact that the state of Texas has its own military department. What does that mean, we have a military department?
Yes, sir. So the Texas Military Department consists of, as everybody knows, the National Guard, the Air National Guard, and then the little-known Texas State Guard. The Texas State Guard is its own militia form, but it's not well-funded and not well-known about. Because when the Texas State Guard gets called by the governor to activate, they just show up in a nice, pretty uniform and say, hi, we're here to help. But they're acting in the role of almost as a bystander in a military uniform.
Okay, real quick. Is the Texas National Guard, it's a federal, no, the federal government can federalize the Texas National Guard. Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
But they're actually a state unit, correct?
The Texas State Guard is controlled by the governor. The State Guard is a direct extension of the governor's office, and it acts independently from the federal. As you said, the National Guard can be used by the federal government to go to different disasters. The State Guard acts as the Texas militia, but that's all I saw on paper.
Okay, so what's the Texas Military Department then?
So the Texas Military Department is the National Guard, the Texas State Guard, and the Air National Guard. So when you hear national, that's attached to the Army.
So is it different than, for example, other states, the Ohio National Guard, other states' National Guards?
So the National Guards are all the same. It's controlled by the Department of the Army. So it's because they still go to the same training as the Army. They go to the Army boot camp.
Yeah.
But the Texas National Guard is something that Texas does. They have their own internal program that they train you for. But the training for this Texas State Guard isn't...
Okay, I'm sorry, you're confused me. There's a State Guard, there's a National Guard.
Correct.
Please, break it down for the state of Texas again. What are the military units?
So the National Guard...
The Texas
National Guard is an arm of the Army. It's like, hey, this is a Texas version of the Army.
And it reports to the governor?
And no, it can, but it primarily can report to the federal.
Okay, it reports to the Department of Army.
Yes, that's how their training is.
Okay,
It's linked.
that's the Texas National Guard reports to the Department of Army. Next.
The Texas Air National Guard, same thing as the National Guard. Now, the
Texas Air National Guard also reports to the United States military.
Correct. And then the Texas State Guard, that is Texas alone. And that one reports directly and only to the governor of Texas, nobody else.
Can the United States president ever nationalize that group, the Texas State Guard?
No. They can nationalize the National Guard, but not the Texas State Guard.
What is the purpose of the Texas State Guard?
The Texas State Guard was initially for Texas defense. That is acting as our own militia to do what the best interest of the state.
How big is it? How many members?
It's not that many, and it fluctuates rapidly. I mean, there's less than 2,000 people in the Texas State Guard, and they're not very well trained. They're not well equipped. Every member of the Texas State Guard has to buy their own equipment. Most of them have to pay for their own fuel and transportation. They might be able to get reimbursed if activated, but it's primarily on their own. And the Texas Military Department, they're decreasing the funding again.
And this is a volunteer organization.
It's a volunteer organization. Now, if you get called up to like active duty, so in the disaster zones, they got called up and they were getting paid kind of what the Army does, but it gets out of the Texas budget.
What is the name of the person who? Oh, the governor is the head of that military department.
Correct.
Is there a military official? What's the highest ranking military official in the Texas State Guard?
On that one, I do not know the top of my head.
Why are you bringing this up as a pertinent issue for discussion?
I'm bringing this up because it's an arm of Texas that, one, we don't know about. Most Texans don't know that we have a state guard. But then the other part is I was talking to multiple states guardsmen recently. And when we were having the border crisis a few years ago, these states guardsmen were activated by the governor. And when they showed up, they weren't given equipment. They were just in their uniform, standing on the edge of the border.
So you're saying that this, but I mean, probably at the state level, they think we don't need this. We have a massive United States military. Why do we need it?
It's good to have something just in case. One, we can still protect our own interests because if it's federalized, we have to go through federal channels. But then the other side is if you're having a group that you're calling a state guard, the Texas State Guard, and is acting in a military type role, wouldn't you want them to be protected?
Yeah, they need to be formidable, is what you're saying.
They need to be formidable, and they're not.
They're I don't want to say any comments, but they're not trained. They're not equipped. It's very haphazard.
They do have some training, but when you're talking with the individuals, say most of the time they have to pay for their own training. They don't get reimbursed for it very well. And then when they do get deployed, like to the border, they didn't have guns. They didn't have body armor. They just had their uniform and they were just standing there. So when you
can't take them serious in that regard.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you have law enforcement, you have National Guard armed, and then you have somebody who looks like a National Guardsman without anything, they're sitting ducks.
Well, what would you, if you're the governor, how much money would you dedicate to this and what would be your intended outcome? What do you want this group to look like?
So this group, my view, it needs to be a full-on fighting force that's capable. Because if you're going to call it a state guard and that they're going to be able to defend Texans.
Yeah, because it's just this title right now.
Exactly.
And we walk around, pound our chests. We're Texas. We're the only ones with our own national military or, statewide military. And we really don't have one. It's not credible. That's kind of what you're saying?
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Is to actually give them teeth to get them the funding that they need to be formidable and the right training. Because if you're touting it as, hey, this is our own military, this is our own great force, it looks good on paper and from the front. But when you actually talk to the members of this group, they're going to tell you otherwise.
Well, I mean, what would the numbers you want to see in it? What would be the enrollment? Would 10,000 members? What are you thinking?
I think we at least need 5,000 to 10,000 people and actually get them trained often.
And they would be weekend warriors. They'd be working their full-time jobs. They would be paid for part-time employment.
Correct. And then even have some full-time just in case something pops off. Hey, you can get there quick. But also to own our own type of equipment. When I say own type, I mean our own aircraft, our own Navy. I want to be able to expand that to where, hey, we have our own Texas State Air Wing Navy, and to actually get them the proper equipment that's needed. Because if something ever happens, we want to be able to defend ourselves, but to be able to move quicker. And that's just our mentality of Texas and this U.S. We were formed on militias. We were formed on citizens pushing back against the government. That's how we were formed.
We've obviously learned in these past decade plus that a check and balance system is essential to life, or if not, we're just dominated by a one world government. So to finish up here, let's talk about the emergency responses at the state level. You see it as an issue. I think that you're seeing the Hill Country floods as a reason. Tell me what your opinion is on that and why you've come to the conclusion.
So one of the problems that we're seeing is a lot of emergency managers aren't well trained. And we actually got to hear in some of the public testimonies that it's an appointed position that they need to check a box and to fill. As one of the county judges stated, we can't afford to pay someone to do the job correctly, because however much training that they would need and that it would require, they can't afford that. So they're appointing people at a lower rate and who may not be qualified in the response. And then these responses, it can get crazy. So this Hill Country flood that we had, there were multiple counties that got hit and affected. Kerrville, Kirk County got hit the hardest. There is no one questioning that. But then you had other areas like Leander that had about 10 people pass away in that county. And I stood in Leander, specifically Sandy Creek, where there were 6 people who passed away out of 2 homes. And the devastation was just massive. And it's to create a better coordination between the state, federal, and the volunteer groups that come in. Because when a disaster happens, it's not the federal government or the state government that does the cleanup, that does the big punches. It's a lot of the volunteer organizations that come in, they do the cleanup, they help out. They're the ones getting the donations in the places that need it. So it's a better coordination between those. I got to watch quite a few people, including myself, getting turned away by local officials saying, oh yeah, no, we're good. We have all the help that we need. And then you drive down the street, not even a minute, and you see complete devastation. There was one area in Sandy Creek that we went to where the floods happened on July 5th on Sandy Creek. So July 4th, Kerrville got decimated. The next day, Sandy Creek got hit hard. And that was a Saturday. That Wednesday, some of the officials were starting to come down that road, and they were like, oh my gosh, we didn't realize you got hit that hard. Like, we didn't think the devastation was this bad. And that is 5 days into the incident. So it's getting a better coordination between all these volunteer groups and the state. Say, hey, look, we may have too many resources here, but let's figure out where we can redeploy you. Because we had people coming from all over the country to different parts, like Kerrville, and saying, hey, we're too busy here, go home. We have enough help, we're good. My phone, I got at least 5 phone calls in one day from groups who were getting turned around in Kerrville. I was like, hey, do you need assistance in Sandy Creek? Do you need assistance in this area? And it's like, yes. Are you sure? Do you still need help? This one guy asked me 5 times while on speakerphone, do you have work for us? Can we actually work? And I was like, yes, we do. I was sending them pictures. They're like, okay, great. We're on our way. We'll be there within 2 hours. So we got to see a lack of coordination and then accountability. Because on every natural disaster, it's the same thing. It's he said, she said, it's your fault, it's not mine. And unfortunately, we watched people like emergency managers or even county judges, they're the scapegoats. They get put on the chopping block. And we watch it as a witch hunt, wherein some of these issues can be solved in the state legislature and they refuse to. So when a disaster happens, they're now blaming the emergency manager, the county judges. They're blaming somebody else and saying, you know what? hey, we screwed up. This is our fault. And we watch the scapegoating happen. And at the end of the day, things don't get rebuilt. People don't get to have their home, get to live back in their homes. And it takes forever to get assistance. That's the real problem. So we need to streamline this by working closer with organizations, speeding up the amount of recovery time, and getting people back into homes. For FEMA, if you've been devastated, FEMA does not authorize a rebuild until a year later. So for the July 4th people who lost their floods on the July 4th and 5th, they cannot even start rebuilding their homes until July 4th or 5th, 2026. That's insane. What are you going to do in that meantime? Live in a hotel, an Airbnb, hope somebody can find you a spot. So it's to streamline that process and push it forward. And that needs to be a top priority because let's face it, disasters happen all the time. This isn't just a one-off event.
Very well put together. Very well put together, and I cannot argue against that. Well, Tim, our hour's come to an end. Man, it was incredible. I didn't know what to expect from this. I never met you before. You driving in from San Antonio, but this hour has been incredible, and you know, I think that you're a very interesting man, and I am very interested in seeing what happens in your candidacy for lieutenant governor.
I appreciate that. Time flies when you're having fun. Like, I don't even. It's now 8:06. Damn, I didn't even realize it was.
Do you want to give out your website or anything like that on the way out here?
Yeah. So if you want to get involved, learn more about who I am, you can go to Timothy4TX.com. Once again, that is Timothy4TX.com. And there, if you want to volunteer to donate, to volunteer to be part of the campaign, to donate, or just learn more about what we're doing, go to Timothy4TX.com and join the movement, because we have to push back, not just against the Democrats and the left, but against bad policies.
Great. Well, thank you for coming in, and thank you for this hour. Appreciate it big time. And this is Chris Heasley with the Chris Heasley Radio Show, and we will be back here on Saturday, 10 a.m. with one more hot topic. Have a great week.